HOA cops pulled a taser on my wife. Unaware she's special forces, and her team was already locked in. 12 seconds. That's all it took. From HOA warnings to a classified strike protocol. The stun gun clicked, but the black SUV turned the corner first. They thought it was about trash bins, until a federal agent saluted her on our front lawn. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. You always think peace is a destination. A clean street, two-car garage, fresh mulch, the kind of neighborhood where people wave without knowing your name, and your Amazon packages stay put on the porch. After 20 years of bouncing between overseas deployments and domestic assignments, I thought we'd earned that. We bought the house in June. It was a pristine colonial with navy shutters and a wraparound porch. My wife instantly called perimeter perfect. That was her way of saying she could see in every direction. Old habits, I guess. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. Remote, quiet, forgettable. Exactly how I like it. My wife? She's retired, or so the paperwork says. Officially, she left her last unit 3 years ago. Unofficially, I've never asked what she still does on that encrypted laptop. We moved to Briar Hills Estates because it looked like the kind of place where people went to forget things. The HOA brochure promised order, safety, and unparalleled community standards. Most people would skim past a line like that, but not her. She stared at it for a long time. "This is either Stepford or surveillance," she said, half joking. I should have listened closer. The first week was bliss. And by bliss, I mean no noise, no surprises, no need to look over our shoulders. The lawn sparkled like someone polished each blade of grass. The neighborhood gym had complimentary eucalyptus towels. People jogged in formation. It felt artificial but comforting. Then came the first notice. A thin slip of paper folded into our mailbox. Trash bin outside regulated hours, level 1 warning. I blinked. We'd taken the bins out at 6:01 p.m. The community rulebook allowed it at 6. We were 60 seconds off. "Is this serious?" I asked, holding the paper up. She didn't answer. Just watched the street through the living room blinds. A white SUV had just pulled to a slow stop in front of our house. No logo, tinted windows. A man in a high-vis vest stared at our recycling can, wrote something on a tablet, then drove off. It didn't stop there. Week 2, we got flagged for grass height variance. Our lawn was exactly 3.1 inches. The rulebook capped it at 3. Week 3, a warning for non-uniform curtain color visible from exterior. Week 4, someone left a printed note on our windshield in Comic Sans. Neighborhood harmony depends on obedience. By then, I'd begun running passive network scans through our home router. Someone was pinging our Wi-Fi perimeter, testing for vulnerabilities. The source was always a masked IP, but local. Very local. "Should I be worried?" I asked her one night as we sat on the back deck, sipping tea. She didn't look at me, just said, "They're probing, establishing dominance. It's not personal yet." The HOA president was a man named Marvin Clay, a retired insurance auditor with an alarming amount of enthusiasm for uniform flower beds and mandatory paint palettes. At our first HOA meeting, he greeted us with a handshake that lingered too long. "We take community harmony seriously here," he said, smiling like he was hiding something behind his teeth. He ran the meetings like a drill sergeant, flanked by 2 other board members in matching navy polos that's read Civic Compliance Patrol. "That's not a real thing," I whispered to my wife. "It is now," she muttered. Their presence escalated quickly. The white SUV, now 2 of them, began showing up outside our house twice a day. They'd idle for 5 minutes, sometimes get out, walk around the property with clipboards. One even knelt by our mailbox and took a photo. "You think it's because of us?" I asked. "Military background?" "No," she said, standing slowly. "It's because we don't scare easy." Then the letter came. A plain envelope. No return address. Slipped under our front door while we were home. I opened it, read the first line, and froze. "You have been flagged as non-compliant residents under Section 12(4) of the Harmony Mandate." There was no explanation, no offense listed, just vague legalese about patterns of disregard and a summons to a review assessment. I showed it to her. She read it once, folded it in half, and tucked it into a locked file box in the hall closet. "They've escalated too fast," she said. "Means they're either hiding something or targeting us to distract from someone else." That night, we heard footsteps near the backyard fence. A motion light clicked on. No one was there. My wife opened a drawer in the hallway cabinet, removed a small black pouch, and zipped it shut. "What's that?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just said, "This isn't just HOA nonsense anymore. This is a threat protocol." And that's when I knew we hadn't moved into peace. We'd walked straight into someone else's battlefield. It started like any other morning. My wife left for the gym at 0600. Her usual time. She's precise like that. Same route, same parking spot, same pair of combat-grade earbuds. Even though she only listens to jazz now, she still treats routines like protocol, predictable only to her, impossible to manipulate. I was midway through a second cup of coffee when the text came through. Just 4 words. HOA patrol. Tailing me. No panic. No punctuation. Just a status report. Calm. But that tone, flat and stripped of detail, meant something was wrong. I tapped back a quick reply, visible or tail distance. She answered, "1 car behind, white Civic, same guy from trash day." That told me everything I needed to know. The Civic Compliance Patrol had apparently graduated from lawn citations to mobile surveillance. Over the past few weeks, we'd caught glimpses of their so-called security volunteers, watching our place from parked vehicles, using binoculars under the pretense of code enforcement. They were always out of uniform, which made them harder to call out, but we noticed the pattern, always the same 2 or 3 faces. That morning, it escalated. She called me, voice steady, almost amused. "He boxed me in at the gym lot," she said. "Claims I'm violating perimeter security standards. Asked to search the vehicle for non-conforming resident ID." "What did you say?" I asked. "I told him I don't answer to fake badges and popped the trunk for fun." And he backed off, but he flashed something on his hip before walking away. A stun gun. Civilian grade. Holstered, but visible. That made me pause. He showed it deliberately. "Oh, absolutely," she said, voice clipped. "Peacocking, like a rookie with too much permission and not enough leash." She came home 15 minutes later, unbothered, but her energy had shifted. "Think they're trying to bait me?" she asked, untying her shoes. "Or intimidate," I replied. "Either way, it's a mistake." She nodded, then went outside. Said she wanted to walk the perimeter. 5 minutes later, she came back in holding something small and black in her palm. She set it on the table between us like it was evidence. A body cam. HOA issued. Still warm. Still on. She'd found it zip-tied to the underside of our mailbox post. We stared at it in silence. I turned it over. The model was a retail knockoff, cheap, mass-produced, but clearly configured to sync with a network. I cracked the plastic housing open and found a miniature transmitter blinking green. "Live feed?" she asked. "Looks like." She leaned in close. "Can you trace the receiver?" I grinned. "Watch me." That night, while she sat cross-legged in front of the fireplace, polishing an old coin like it was a meditation exercise, I dug into the HOA's internal network. I'd been slowly probing the system ever since our 3rd warning notice, running passive traces, checking which IPs pinged our smart devices. I hadn't gone full breach. Not yet. But tonight felt different. Personal. The back door was embarrassingly easy. Marvin Clay used the same password for his HOA admin panel as he did for his old Facebook account. Harmony 20. Once inside, I found everything. And I do mean everything. There was a folder marked high-risk profiles. Inside were PDFs, case files on a dozen residents. Our file was the thickest. My wife's face was circled in red. Notes speculated about her military background. One line read, "Potential psychological resistance to authority. Monitor for subversive behavior." There were GPS logs of our movements. Surveillance stills. Even a list of guests who'd visited us since moving in. One tab was labeled Compliance Field OPS. It tracked Civic Patrol's movements, roads, objectives. A whole column marked escalation pathways. That's when it hit me. This wasn't enforcement. This was reconnaissance. And my wife and I weren't residents to them. We were targets. I pulled back from the screen, heart pounding, not with fear, but with a cold, clean fury. I looked at her across the room. She hadn't moved, just polishing that coin with that same focused intensity. "You might want to see this," I said. She walked over silently, reading from the screen. Her jaw tightened. Not a flinch, not a word. When she finished, she stood up, walked into the guest room, and pulled a hard case from the closet. She laid it flat on the dining table and opened it slowly. Inside was a satellite phone, a faded tactical notebook, and a coin I'd never seen before, silver, marked with a strange crest. She picked up the phone. "I need to activate Echo Sierra," she said. Pause. "This is Valkyrie 4. Status: active. Community level breach. Surveillance verified. Targeting confirmed." She hung up, turned to me. "You're not the only one who kept a few tools," she said. That night, she sat outside in the dark, watching the street, calm, still, like a statue with perfect muscle memory. I joined her quietly. "They pushed the wrong profile," I said. She smiled. "No, they just assumed they were the ones holding the leash." And right then, I realized this wasn't about a lawn violation or a mailbox cam anymore. This was chess, and the opening move had just been answered. There's a moment when you're digging through someone else's system where the air changes. It's not about finding something illegal. At that point, you expect it. It's about realizing they've already been watching you, filing away your habits, your routines, your moments of privacy like data points in a war game. That moment hit me at 2:13 a.m., 3 days after we found the body cam. My wife had gone to bed, or at least pretended to. I sat in the dim light of my office, half lit by the glow of 4 screens and a flickering smart lamp. I was inside the HOA's internal architecture now, not just the public system Marvin Clay paraded around in meetings, but the real framework, tucked behind spoofed IPs and password-protected shells labeled annual landscaping reports. Nice try, Marvin. I peeled it all back layer by layer. At the root level, I found it. A folder, plain, deceptively dull, labeled HTR. Inside, a spreadsheet, codenames, risk levels, behavioral flags. We weren't just listed, we were ranked. Resident V4, Watch Tier Alpha. My wife's profile included timestamps, security footage, thermal drone logs. Someone had tagged her as a potential security risk, prior clearance unknown. There was even a psychological profile, likely scraped from public records, and distorted. It claimed she was stoic, emotionally unyielding, possible PTSD indicators. I let out a breath through my nose. Whoever wrote that had no idea how wrong or how right they were. A separate document titled Harmonization Obstruction Registry chilled me to the bone. It was a blacklist. Dozens of residents, each flagged for non-compliance, disruption, or in our case, analytical resistance to surveillance-based adjustment. Translation: we didn't play nice. I kept digging deep into the file paths. I traced administrative uploads to a personal IP address. Marvin Clay. But not just him. The logs showed access by 2 other admins, names I didn't recognize until I pulled driver's license records and cross-referenced them with community meeting sign-in sheet. Both were former law enforcement. Both had been discharged within the last 5 years. One for use of force violations, the other for falsifying reports. Now they were Marvin's civic patrol. HOA cops with badges they printed themselves, carrying tasers they weren't licensed to own. And they were conducting what they called unofficial security sweeps of select residents, us included. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just clarity. Cold, focused clarity. I downloaded everything, encrypted it, backed it up 3 times. Cloud, drive, and an isolated SSD I hadn't touched in years. Then I walked down the hallway, past the softly humming smart thermostat, and into the living room. She was there, awake, sitting in the dark. "I figured you'd find something," she said, voice flat. "What do they call us?" "V4 Tier Alpha," I replied. "You've got your own file. Psychological flag. Possible threat assessment." She didn't blink. "Drones surveillance. Footage from last week. They've been watching us." Still nothing. 2 of the Civic Patrol guys are ex-cops. dishonorably removed. They're running rogue ops under the HOA umbrella. Armed? That's when she moved. She stood, walked silently to the hallway closet, and pulled out the black hard case she hadn't touched in years. She laid it flat on the dining table, clicked it open. Out came the encrypted sat phone. She turned it on, entered a long string of digits from memory, and held it to her ear. Echo Sierra command. This is Valkyrie 4, she said. Activate under code black. Community surveillance breach. Civilian intimidation confirmed. I am reactivating status. There was a pause. I heard a faint voice on the other end. She responded, yes. Full digital log secured. Physical presence remains covert for now. She ended the call and turned to me. You're still on call? I asked, voice lower than I intended. She looked at me, unblinking, unapologetic. I never left. She placed the phone back into the case and locked it. No further explanation. That was the night the dynamic shifted. We weren't defending ourselves anymore. Now it was us watching them. And Marvin Clay had just triggered something he wasn't remotely prepared to handle. She disappeared without a word. No goodbye, no explanation, just a note on my desk that read, back in 36, don't open the closet. I didn't ask where she went. I knew better. I'd seen that look in her eyes only twice before. Once when a convoy went dark in Kandahar, and again when her CO tried to send her home early. She wasn't rattled, she was calibrating. 36 hours later, she walked through the front door with a duffel bag and 3 strangers trailing behind her like shadows. They didn't speak much, just nodded once each, quiet and alert. They moved like normal people trying too hard to look normal, which meant they weren't normal at all. One introduced himself as Caleb, new landscaping contractor for the HOA. Another, a woman named Riley, had a leash in her hand and a golden retriever in tow. Just moved in 2 streets down, she said, tossing a Kong toy across our lawn like she'd lived there for years. The third one didn't speak. He just slipped into the garage and didn't come out for 4 hours. When he did, our security grid had doubled in sensitivity and half our smart appliances had been rerouted through a secure node. I didn't know we had. That's when I realized. We weren't defending ourselves anymore. We were preparing a case. The first step was surveillance, ours this time. We deployed microdrones camouflaged as lawn pests. One buzzed around the HOA patrol's SUV, syncing directly to a secure feed we monitored from a nondescript tablet in our kitchen. Another was disguised as a bird feeder. The perch tilted just enough to pivot a pinhole lens toward the Vivek patrol's daily loop. We rigged porch lights with a color-coded signal system. White, all clear. Amber, watch movement. Red, engage protocol. I don't think Marvin Clay ever noticed. That was the beauty of it. Our defense looked exactly like HOA compliance. Every day, we gathered intel, documented times, faces, violations. HOA patrol, walking onto private property, photographing windows, peeking through fences. Riley, the dog walker, recorded audio of one patrol member instructing another to escalate visibility pressure. Then came the flyers, folded into mailboxes, slipped under doors, cheaply printed and aggressively worded. Non-compliant operatives among us. Watch for signs of disorder. We were no longer just residents. They were painting us as infiltrators. Irony practically folded itself into a pretzel. That night, I sat with my wife on the back deck. Moonlight glinted off the ceramic teapot she poured like we were discussing garden soil, not civilian espionage. They're pushing, I said. They're untrained, she replied. They push because they don't know how to pivot. And Marvin? He's about to make a mistake. We planted the seed the next morning. A casual conversation at the community fitness center. Riley dropped a line in earshot of a known HOA loyalist. Yeah. Apparently her husband's tied into some kind of government audit team. Something about misuse of private patrols? We didn't say it directly. We didn't have to. By sunset, Marvin Clay had gone full DEFCON. He held a civic safety briefing on the cul-de-sac, complete with portable speakers and laminated threat diagrams. He pointed at a generic silhouette marked outside influence, said phrases like subversion, quiet disruption, and harmonization failure vectors. Translation: he was scared. We stayed quiet, collected. Then, right on cue, came the emergency compliance sweep. 3 Civic Patrol SUVs circled the block like buzzards. One parked outside our home for a full hour, engine running, lights off. Another cruised past our neighbor's driveway, filming our trash cans like they were contraband. I saw Caleb crouched by a shrub, clipping roses that didn't need trimming. He tapped twice on his earpiece. "They're scanning for a reaction," he murmured. "But they're giving us pattern data instead." That night, I reviewed the footage, compiled timestamps, overlaid facial ID from drone captures with the HOA registry. My wife walked in, glanced over my shoulder, and smiled faintly. "Next move's his," she said. "And if he chooses wrong—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. It was supposed to be just another quiet morning. I was standing in the kitchen, coffee in hand, watching the sun break across the neighbor's rooftop. Birds chirped. Sprinklers hissed. Our front yard looked peaceful, untouched. Then I heard it. Gravel crunching. Heavy. Measured. I set the mug down slowly. Walked to the window. They came in formation, 6 of them, wearing matching navy polos with Civic Compliance Patrol stitched in militarized font across the chest. Clipboards in one hand, body cams flashing red on their collars. And one of them, larger shaved head, too much adrenaline behind his gait, had a stun gun holstered openly on his hip. They didn't knock. They marched up the lawn like they owned it. Like they were about to make an example. My wife was already outside, kneeling by the rosebush she trimmed every Saturday like clockwork. She didn't look up when they approached. Just clipped one stem, then another. The lead guy stepped forward. Marvin wasn't with them, but his presence was all over the scene. The clipboard command tone, the forced legalese, the need to perform control. "Ma'am," he barked, "you are in direct violation of subsection 14B, resistance to harmonization enforcement. You've been cited multiple times. This is now an escalated compliance intervention." She stood up slowly, brushed off her hands, didn't say a word. Another stepped in, brandishing a laminated document like it was a warrant. "You've been FAGE for surveillance evasion, obstruction of community operations, and suspected infiltration of HOA governance. We are authorized to detain for questioning under emergency statute." I opened the door. "That's not a real statute." The guy with the stun gun turned toward me. "Step back inside, sir. This is between us and the subject." "Subject?" My wife tilted her head, as if studying a toddler throwing a tantrum. She still hadn't said anything. Then Clipboard Man nodded to the one with the taser. "Show her we're not kidding." He stepped forward, slowly pulled the taser, clicked it once. That crackle split the air. The patrol grinned, and that's when she spoke. Her voice changed. Not louder, sharper, like a command knife gliding across glass. "Put that down," she said, "and step back. You are 12 seconds away from federal interference." They blinked, then started laughing. Nervous, mocking. "Lady, this is HOA jurisdiction. No one's coming for you." Her eyes never left the taser. 10 seconds. The air shifted. And then, like it had been rehearsed, a black SUV rounded the corner. No headlights. No markings. It rolled to a perfect stop in front of our house. The door opened. Out stepped a man in plain clothes, close-cropped hair, badge clipped low on his belt. Federal issue. His eyes scanned the patrol, then landed on her. He walked up the lawn calmly, saluted. "Commander," he said. Every clipboard dropped an inch. The man turned to the group. "This is now a federal matter. Step away from the property." They froze. One guy stammered something about community authority. The agent cut him off. "You're impersonating law enforcement, carrying unlicensed weapons, and interfering with a protected domestic asset. I suggest you leave." The taser disappeared back into its holster. No one said another word. They backed off in a shuffle of panic and disbelief. Like they suddenly realized they'd stepped on a minefield and were waiting for the click. My wife exhaled once. Just once. The agent nodded to her. "Team Echo is on standby. Your call." She didn't respond, just turned, clipped another rose, and walked inside like nothing happened. And I realized then, they'd brought a taser to a chess match, but the board had never belonged to them. Absolutely. Here's Section 6, Counterstrike, the hidden directive, written in a cannoled, righteous tone, as the power balance finally tips hard. The story escalates from neighborhood conflict to national relevance, revealing the full scope of my wife's authority and the legal firepower backing her. Word count are 600 words. You spend years thinking you know someone. Then one day, they speak into a satellite phone and get silhouetted on your front lawn, and you realize you only ever knew the surface. I knew my wife served. I knew she carried things with her, silent things, unread files and memories she'd never unpacked. What I didn't know is that she never truly left the field. She just changed her zone of operation. Turns out, there's a division most people have never heard of. Domestic Integrity Watch. It doesn't show up on org charts. Its operatives don't carry badges or wear uniforms. They don't kick down doors. They document, observe, and surgically dismantle threats to civil liberty from within. She's one of them. Still is. And two HOAs operating as rogue municipalities. That's a red flag buried in a blinking siren. 2 hours after the confrontation on the lawn, her team activated Directive Echo. It's a classified protocol, signed off at the federal level, that permits legal intervention when non-government entities impersonate or enforce authority under false pretense. Think corporate security firms acting like SWAT teams. Or in this case, neighborhood watchmen pretending they run a sovereign state. Directive Echo doesn't need local approval. It supersedes it. Quietly, legally, surgically. Within 24 hours, our lawyer hand-delivered formal cease and desist letters to the HOA board, citing illegal detainment, impersonation of law enforcement, unauthorized surveillance, misuse of community funds for coercive operations. Marvin Clay didn't respond directly, but the HOA website went down the same day. Their patrol logs vanished. Their monthly newsletter skipped circulation for the first time in 5 years. But we weren't done. We didn't just want compliance. We wanted sunlight. So we released the footage. Not all of it, just the essentials. A crisp 90-second clip. HOA patrol blocking our lawn. The stun gun click. My wife calmly warning them. They were 12 seconds from federal interference. The black SUV arriving. The salute. No edits, no commentary. Just the raw moment. We uploaded it anonymously, timed to drop with the sunrise. By noon, it had 400,000 views. By evening, it had a name. The HOA that messed with the wrong wife. Cable news ran with it. Commentators debated if HOAs had gone too far. Reddit threads lit up with stories from other neighborhoods suffering the same kind of authoritarian creep. But the most damning blow came from a local civil liberties group that issued a press release within 4 hours. This footage highlights a growing trend of unregulated enforcement operations masquerading as civic oversight. This HOA was operating outside the law and got caught by someone who knew exactly how to handle it. Marvin Clay tried to play defense. He posted a video in front of a flag, claimed he was protecting community values. But he stumbled. He said the words detainment protocol 3 times. That triggered a formal response from the state attorney's office. An investigation was opened. Subpoenas issued. HOA board members began stepping down for personal reasons. Their private group chats, thanks to a subpoena and a few mirrored backups we happened to preserve, didn't survive scrutiny. One message from Marvin read, "She's not just military, she's something else. We need to shut this down now." Too late. The game was no longer his. My wife didn't gloat. She never does. She simply watched it all unfold like someone watching a puzzle complete itself, one she had solved before it even started. "This isn't just about us," she said. It never was. And I believed her. Because in her world, this wasn't war. This was cleanup. It was supposed to be just a clip. 43 seconds. No music. No captions. No face filters or flashy edits. Just a camera feed, clean and unblinking. Capturing the moment, a man in a Navy HOA polo drew a stun gun on my wife and got calmly told he was 12 seconds away from federal interference. The video ends just as the black SUV rolls into frame, and the agent steps out. The timing was cinematic, but it wasn't fiction. We uploaded it quietly. No fanfare, no call to arms. Just a digital match dropped into a dry forest. By morning, it had 80,000 views. By noon, it had crossed 1 million. By dinner time, my wife was a meme. The internet did what it does best. explode, and assign names. The calm before the storm was the most popular. A freeze frame of her standing dead still, hands relaxed at her sides, eyes locked on the patrol like she already knew how it ended. Another dubbed her the HOA whisperer. Someone layered soft classical music over the clip and slowed it down to 80%. It somehow made it feel even more dangerous. But my favorite was one captioned, "She didn't flinch, he flinched for her." Within 48 hours, we had media trucks circling the block. Local news first, then regional. A national anchor flew in from DC just to ask, what did she know that scared them so badly? The better question was, what didn't she say? Marvin Clay tried to do damage control. He always liked the sound of his own voice, and this time was no different. He called an emergency HOA town hall, rented a podium, set up folding chairs, stood in front of a county flag, and a poorly photoshopped banner that said "Protecting Neighborhood Peace." He called the incident a misunderstanding, claimed the patrol was volunteer-based and community-minded, referred to my wife as a civilian with a past and the federal agent as likely a consultant. Then a reporter asked about the internal files, the high-risk resident lists, the fake statutes, the thermal imaging logs. Marvin blinked, sweated, denied. Too late. The state attorney general's office released a statement 3 days after the footage broke wide. It was short, direct, lethal. "We have opened an official investigation into potential criminal misconduct, including impersonation of law enforcement, civil rights violations, and misuse of HOA authority under state charter law." The phrase "civil rights violations" hit like a brick. And suddenly, Marvin's little suburban empire wasn't just a community quirk. It was a case file. The probe expanded rapidly. They subpoenaed all HOA board communications, forced a financial audit of discretionary funds, searched for missing records and unregistered equipment. Every shred of data we'd captured, now admissible, now public, became evidence. The neighborhood shifted. You could feel it in the silence. Some residents had been afraid to speak. Others just assumed the system worked as long as they weren't the target. But now, everyone had seen it for themselves. People we'd never spoken to showed up on our doorstep, clutching manila envelopes full of their own stories. Harassment, false violations, coerced fines. The HOA was no longer feared. It was exposed. And then Netflix called. I thought it was a prank at first. A guy named Ethan, with a smooth voice and a producer credit on a documentary about military whistleblowers. He said, "We saw the footage, and we're interested. Not just in what happened, but why it keeps happening. This community's not the only one. Yours is just the first to fight back on camera." They flew in a team, set up in the guest bedroom, interviewed my wife for 8 straight hours. She barely blinked, just walked him through timelines, terminology, quiet battles most people never notice until it's too late. I asked her afterward how it felt, finally telling the world. She just said, "Not the world, just enough people who can't be ignored." Marvin Clay officially resigned 6 weeks later, cited health complications. But it wasn't just him. 3 other board members stepped down. 2 are facing charges. 1 fled the state before her subpoena landed. The Civic Patrol disbanded entirely. The vehicles were repossessed. The body cams were confiscated. The tasers disappeared into an evidence locker with a long tag and a short future. And our street, peaceful for real this time. Not enforced, not artificial, just quiet. The kind that doesn't need rules to exist. The funny part is, my wife still acts like nothing's changed. She makes tea every morning, reads the paper in silence, takes long walks with our dog, who's somehow better trained than the entire HOA security team ever was. But I see it now, what Marvin never did. She didn't need to raise her voice, or wave a badge, or even flinch. She didn't win because she fought. She won because they never understood what game they were playing. We filed the lawsuit exactly 2 weeks after the footage broke. Our claims were clear. False imprisonment. Intentional, emotional distress. Violation of state impersonation statute. Invasion of privacy through unauthorized surveillance. Our attorney, a surgical mind with zero patience for theatrics, said we'd be lucky if Marvin Clay settled. He'll want to avoid trial, she said. People like him usually fold under scrutiny. But Marvin didn't fold. He swaggered into the courtroom with his trademark smirk, flanked by a high-priced defense team and a hollow confidence built on years of unchecked authority. He waved at reporters, smoothed his lapel, wore a flag pin like it absolved him. His defense was simple. It was just community enforcement. All actions were taken with safety in mind. This is a misunderstanding fueled by internet hysteria. It might have worked if not for the judge's next words. Per the plaintiff's request, and with supporting documentation under seal, the court will now permit expert testimony from federal asset Echo Sierra 4. The air changed. You could feel it. My wife stood slowly, walked to the stand in silence. No uniform, no ID badge, just a composed woman with a calm gaze and perfect posture. The courtroom stilled. The judge glanced down at a sealed file, reviewed the pages silently, then nodded to her with something that looked a lot like respect. The witness's credentials have been reviewed in chambers and are acknowledged for the record. Her testimony may proceed. What followed wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was precise. My wife laid out a clinical breakdown of the HOA's operations, how their civic patrol had overstepped municipal boundaries, used intimidation to control residents, and committed multiple Class C violations under state law. She used legal code numbers, named equipment models, quoted timestamps from drone footage, and internal memos. The jury scribbled notes frantically. The defense team looked like they were aging in real time. Marvin tried to interrupt once. The judge shut him down with a look. At the end of the testimony, the judge didn't hesitate. Effective immediately, this court issues an emergency injunction dissolving all HOA civic compliance patrol operations. Furthermore, based on new evidence submitted during this hearing, a criminal referral is being issued for impersonation of law enforcement, misuse of community funds, and obstruction of justice. Security approached Marvin before he could even reach the doors. He shouted something about loyalty, about protecting the neighborhood, about them turning this place into a war zone. No one listened. He left in cuffs. As for my wife, she stepped down from the stand, returned to her seat beside me, and folded her hands in her lap. Not a smile. Not a word. Just a single nod. Clean. Quiet. Final. Mission complete. Think your HOA is just about lawn length and mailbox paint? So did we. Until a stun gun, a classified file, and one calm woman rewrote the rules. If you've ever been silenced, cornered, or watched, you're not alone. Stick around. We document everything.